what I would consider a very important conversation about geopolitics and specifically what has transpired in the nation of Israel over the course of the last 11 or so months. And we're treated to have our United States congressman with us who traveled to Israel very recently, had some very high-level conversations, and has, I think, a fascinating perspective because his perspective includes recent visits to Israel, both pre-October 7th and post-October 7th. And so for Congressman Feenstra to be able to share his impressions, I think is going to be very significant to the education that all of us will be treated to this afternoon. That said, my name is Chris McGowan. I serve as the president of the Siouxland Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber is delighted to play a small role in bringing our congressman to our community and this opportunity to hear from him. I also want to thank Charles Schneider, who is the co-chair of Iowans for Israel. Charles has made this afternoon possible, and it's through his generosity and the generosity of his organization that we get to enjoy lunch this afternoon. We'll introduce Charles momentarily, and Charles will then introduce Congressman Feenstra. A couple of housekeeping items. There is food, there's coffee and lemonade in the back, so please help yourselves. I think the plan is for this to be a working lunch, if you will. We expect that you'll continue to enjoy lunch during the course of our conversation this afternoon. We're going to focus on being done at 1 o'clock. We know that you all keep very busy schedules, and if you don't, I can assure you Congressman Feenstra does. So we're going to finish at 1. And before we get to those introductions of Charles and Randy, I want to introduce some of the distinguished guests who have joined us today. We have a number of elected officials and also some individuals who represent elected officials' offices. And in one case, someone who wears both of those hats. So working from left to right, we have former Mayor Craig Berenstein, past chair of the chamber with us, his twin brother Greg, and the new rabbi of our congregation, which is only about 6 or 8 blocks from here. So a pleasure to meet you. And if you haven't had an opportunity to introduce yourself to the rabbi, maybe a month in town, 2 months. So thank you for being with us. Past chair of the chamber and someone who serves on our executive committee, Christopher McManamy, and also Kevin, who is the vice chair and incoming chair of the Siouxland Initiative, our economic development group. Kevin Iowans, State Senator Kevin Iowans, and his wife were with us. Thank you for being with us. And Kevin, thank you for serving in Des Moines. Several members of the Siouxland Chamber of Commerce staff were grateful for their work in helping put this together. Barbara Sloniker, our EVP, Heidi Ranking, who's our Director of Investor Relations, and our Director of Communications, Teresa Rosenboom. We have a contingent representing Bishop Heelan Catholic High School, their president, John Flannery, their co-activities director, Jay Wright, and one of their teachers, Nan Keel, also Mark Stuck, who serves on the board of directors of the Siouxland Initiative, has joined us today as well. Jeff Lapke and Scott Wilson, a couple of our represent one of our leading financial institutions. Jeff is a past chair of the Siouxland Initiative as well. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. And Gwen's been involved in politics and different things in the state of Iowa for a considerable number of time. Spent some time with Gwen since we crossed paths, but thanks for taking some time. I won't introduce every single person, but I will introduce in the back, Jacob Bossman. Jacob Bossman is a state representative. He also works for the office of Senator Charles Grassley. Thank you for wearing both hats today. Colby DeWitt. Colby, formerly with Congressman in our 4th district, and then now with Senator Joni Ernst. Colby, thanks for taking the time. And I'm looking for any other elected officials. Bob Henderson, Representative Bob Henderson, had a busy night last night. To show you the schedule that he and Congressman Feenstra keep, they were at a fundraising event until 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. Bob put a lot of work into that, brought in Sebastian Gorka from Newsmax, formerly with Fox, to talk about the importance of this upcoming election. So Representative Henderson, thanks for being with us. Joining us with, I think we got Senator Iowans. We'll introduce him a second time. We're good. Thank you though, Charles. And then with Congressman Feenstra's office, most of you have had the opportunity to get to know Wes Fatma. He does an outstanding job, a great ambassador for the congressman. He's ubiquitous in his presence at everything. And he told me today, he said, Chris, I've never been here before. So shame on me for making, not making sure that you got up here, but Congressman Wes does a tremendous job for you, and he's everywhere, always. I think he can bilocate. It's impressive. And Emily Schwickerath, who also works for Congressman Feenstra, mostly, I think, on the eastern and central part of the district, but we're happy to have her on this side of the district. And Congressman, I did tell Emily last night, she's working hard, needs a place to crash. Our family residence is about a half mile from Country Celebration. So if she's ever in a pinch, we're happy to host her. That said, today is a really significant day in the history of relations between the United States and Israel, and a very significant day in the history of the war between Palestinian terrorists and the nation of Israel. And I didn't realize that until this morning. I was traveling to work, it was a little earlier than normal, and the radio was reminding us of this day in history. On this day in 1972, Palestinian terrorists stormed the Olympic Village in Munich, Germany, and murdered innocent Israeli athletes and coaches. If you want to learn more about this conflict and the history of this conflict, Google that and read a letter that was written by the son of an Israeli wrestling coach who was murdered by those Palestinian terrorists. And it will have a profound impact on your view of to what levels of depravity these terrorists will engage to make their point. In the context of what we're talking about today, to realize that Olympic Village was stormed by Palestinian terrorists, and Israelis, innocent Israelis, were murdered over 50 years ago. And now we go back to October 7th and say, what has changed? What's new? What is different? What have we learned? What progress is being made? That's the point of our conversation this afternoon, and why we're blessed to have our United States Congressman here to give us perspective on what he believes and what he's seen and what his high-level conversations have led to. With that, I'm going to now introduce our host for this event, the co-chair of Iowans for Israel. Charles Schneider is a former elected official. He's the past president of the Iowa Senate. He grew up in eastern Iowa, bounced around a little bit, ultimately went to Creighton University for his undergrad, University of Iowa for law school. After, and I think simultaneous to his service in the legislature, where he did serve with Congressman Feenstra for a period in the state Senate, he's also legal counsel, in-house legal counsel with the Principal Financial Group. And with what little time he finds left over, he has led and grown Iowans for Israel. I got a call, or maybe it was a text, probably a year ago, from Governor Reynolds. And Governor Reynolds was asking us to support Charles' effort to provide flak jackets for Israelis. And this community stepped up in a big way. Bruce and Linda Kalin are here today. Bruce and Linda joined with the mayor, and Casey Mills comes to mind, myself and a few others, who purchased vests at the governor's request, but at Charles's invitation. And so he continues to make a difference. Last fall, Charles and I collaborated to bring Yuri Goldflam to not only Sioux City, but Des Moines. Uri was a tour guide and really a professor of history in the Holy Land who provided extraordinary perspective to, I think, Charles and maybe the congressman on one of his trips. I don't know if you were led by Uri on any of those trips, but a fascinating individual, and we're talking about bringing him back again this fall to provide more lectures. So with that, please give a warm Siouxland welcome to our host, the individual who's responsible for bringing us this event and providing you lunch, Mr. Charles Schneider.
Thank you, Chris, for helping put this together. This really would not have happened without your help and your guidance, so I really appreciate that. And I also want to point out that I'm one of 10 people on the board of Iowans Supporting Israel. It's not really, Chris gave me a lot of credit and made me look really good, which I really appreciate. But we are a bipartisan nonprofit organization. We're a 501c3. We've been around since 2013. We were founded by Republicans and Democrats. We have a board of 10 members, and we strive for a balance of Republicans and Democrats on our board. We have 5 Republicans on it right now. We have 4 Democrats. We are actively recruiting a 5th Democrat to serve on our board because we believe it's important that we show bipartisan support for the state of Israel and for our Jewish population in Iowa. We want to know that we are with you in this difficult time. One of the things that we do as we try to promote and support the state of Israel and defend its right to exist is have luncheons like this one, where we will invite a guest speaker or an elected official to talk to us about current events. We have one event coming up in October, on Monday, October 28th, that I want to invite you all to. It will be in the Des Moines area, so it's going to be a trip for some of you. But we are having a banquet at beginning at 5:30 on that Monday evening, and we have a special guest speaker joining us. The consulate office for Israel in Chicago does not want us to publicize that Consul General McGowan will be our guest speaker. So I can't tell you that right now, but once they give us clearance to let you know that Consul General McGowan will be our featured speaker, we'll make sure to let you all know, and hopefully that will encourage you to come. We have Iowa and Israel flag pins in the back. Please grab one if you haven't already. Grab a couple if you want to pass them on to someone else. There's a trifold brochure back there that also explains more about who we are and what our mission is. So please take that with you as well. And we also are on social media. So we have a website, IowansupportingIsrael.com. There you can find links to our Facebook page. We're on Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel where we record our presentations, our luncheon presentations, and put them out there for people to watch. So Uri Goldflam's presentation is one that we put on there. So if you missed it here, or you want to see what he said in Des Moines, see if it was any different from what he said here in Sioux City, please go check out our YouTube channel. I also want to thank Shane Lesko with APAC, who's here. Many of you have probably heard of APAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Shane was the leader of my first trip. And I don't know if he led Chris's or not, but he's led trips that include many Iowans. And he does a fantastic job for APAC, and they've been a good resource for us when we try to find speakers to come and talk to us. But that's enough about us. You're really here to see Representative Feenstra. Randy is someone who I got to know really well during my time in the Iowa Senate. He and I served together for, I can't remember if it was 6 or 8 years, Randy. I can't remember when you got elected. Was it 18 or 20? 20 to the House. So we served together for 8 years then. And he never let us forget about Sioux City. I hear that, or Northwest Iowa, I hear that you guys sometimes feel forgotten by the people under the Golden Dome in Des Moines. And I doubt that. I think you guys always feel included, and like you always know that we're thinking about you. But if any of you had any doubts, Randy always made sure that we knew about Northwest Iowa and Northwest Iowa's needs and concerns. I think he's doing a fantastic job for you in the U.S. House. We are pleased to have him with us here today. And with that, please join me in welcoming Representative.
Thanks, Charles. And that was always my stick, right? My stick was, we're always left out in Northwest Iowa. You never talk about it. And that's how I got things done, right? But I have to say, Charles and I, we got so much policy done because we focused on solutions. I mean, you can yell and scream all you want, it doesn't help. But you can figure out solutions. And that's what we try to do, and that's what I continue to do in Congress. So my love of Israel has always been there, but I never realized it until when I first got elected to Congress. There's an APAC. APAC takes freshmen to Israel, and I went on a trip. McCarthy was our minority leader at the time, and Steny Hoyer came along. He was the leader of the Democrats at the time. I think there was 15 of us, whatever it might be. Naftali Bennett was the prime minister. So we got to talk to Naftali Bennett, and at that trip was simply about understanding geopolitics of Israel, seeing the sites, obviously, for me, being a Christian, to see all the different sites that really affected me, but also to understand the dangers and the concerns that are there being Israel, right? Being where they are, being where they're located. And we saw Gaza, the Gaza Strip. We saw, the different borders and all these things. We were in a kibbutz, and a kibbutz is a village. Obviously, maybe you know this, but a kibbutz is a village of 200-300 people that do their own farming. They take care of themselves. And the one kibbutz we were in was just adjacent to the Gaza Strip. I mean, Gaza was right there. I mean, you could see it. There's two fences. And the people in this kibbutz talked to us and said, we're concerned, but we're not concerned because Israel has this great military. We have these great fences. A rabbit could get close to that fence and they know about it. I mean, that's how secure this place is. Okay, that was wonderful. It's great to hear. So that was a fun trip. Well, I got to go back, right? So obviously October 7th happened. One of the saddest days in my era of being in Congress and in my life personally, because I'll tell you why shortly. But I had this opportunity. So Steny Hoyer, again, Democrat, leader, me and him sort of had this, after we got back from Israel, we always talked to each other once in a while. Obviously, we were on different sides of the political spectrum, but he respected me, I respected him. And after October 7 happened, me and him talked multiple times, and he's been to Israel, by the way, 30, 40 times. He's very well known there. And he said, Randy, I want to go to Israel, and I want to take you with me. And he said, can we maybe have 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and then we go together and just understand what's happening. And that's what happened. Actually, there were seven of us, 4 Democrats, 3 Republicans that went. And from what I saw 3 years ago to when I went last, was it November? It'd have to be October, November, what was it, January? It was in January, yes. It was just night and day, especially the geopolitical arena and what happened. So let me just tell you one story. So the kibbutz I visited the first time, we went back. And the love, the joy that was there the first time was gone. And there's probably 30 people still there. And this lady that we talked to the first time was there, and it was so hard because she lost her son. She lost her parents through this terror attack that happened October 7th. But I remember being in this kibbutz, and the great thing about this kibbutz is all the young people, after they got to college, they all lived in this one area, right? And they each had their own individual sort of little apartment. It wasn't necessarily an apartment, it's sort of like a little townhome, but they're all connected. All the townhomes, all these little homes were connected. And there was about 40 of these individual single people just out of college that were in these little homes. And the second time when we were there, we walked back through that area, and now it was all shattered. And the doors, I mean, it was just a ghost town in essence. And 17 young kids lost their lives. and just her telling a story of how it actually happened. So first of all, in this kibbutz, they do have security. The guards do not carry guns. They have all the guns in one little building, all right? And so the security guards know where the guns are. But when Hamas came, they came so fast and bulldozed the fence. They came to the fence so fast. And again, they shut down the security, so they didn't realize it was happening so fast. The first thing they did is they went to the building where all the guns were, and they you know, they captured that little building. And from there, obviously, you know, there was no security anymore, no guns, no one fighting back. And then they just went from home to home, shooting, doing, beheading, all this gruesome stuff that you've heard. And I got it until I saw, what I truly saw was when these young college kids, where they were killed. You know, they didn't have a chance. They had their little room, and that was it. And my wife and I just struck us like, oh my goodness, this is sick. These are terrorists. These are awful, awful people. And then that same day, we also got to go to the Nova Music Festival where 364 Israelis were killed. And you don't get really what happened until you go there. You see there's trees, sort of like a little plantation area. There's just trees around, and there's a nice open area. These people didn't have a chance. And to hear the stories about them trying to flee, trying to get into cars, and just being brutally killed. I tell you this is because we can never look at Hamas and Palestine as these wonderful people, right? Hamas is terrorists. They're evil. They're evil. They have to be destroyed. And I say that because there's this different view in different parts of the world, in the US, about Hamas. And I just always want to remind ourselves they're terrorists. So on the flip side, I just want to then we'll go into questions and answers. But on the geopolitical side, so first time, obviously, we got to meet with Naftali Bennett, Gantz, you name it. The second time around, obviously, and it's funny, Netanyahu told us the first time, don't worry, I'll be prime minister again, just give me a little time. Of course he did. He made it. I mean, the guy has like 9 lives. It just happened. But the second time around, he was so serious. And he just said, we need you, America. We have to have your support. And Steny Hoyer got it. Steny Hoyer said, absolutely. But he said, Steny, but Steny, your president doesn't get it. And Steny said, no, he gets it. He goes, no, he doesn't. And there was this little argument a little bit. We were in this little room. He goes, he doesn't understand how serious this is. Not only are we fighting Hamas, but we're fighting Hezbollah. And if you don't stand with us, you don't give us what we want, we will be destroyed. And he was right. I mean, he's right in that saying that how serious this is. And then we got to talk to the defense minister, Gallant. Gallant led us through exactly how it happened, how they were in Gaza. And it's what's not being told is the real story of they're trying to protect the Palestinian people as much as possible. They're sending in flyers before they bomb. They're trying to move them, saying, hey, get out of here. We're going to give you 10 days to get out of this area because we're going to take it over. That never happens in war, but Israel people, that's what they're doing. And the foreign minister of Israel talking about how they're trying to help the Palestinian people with health and all this other stuff, but the UN refuses to talk about it. The UN on the other side takes all the information from Hamas, and so the Hamas defense ministry says X amount were killed. The Hamas ministry says they're not being fed, they're starving. Well, just we all know this, but the people in Gaza were starving before this ever happened because all of Hamas was using their money to build tunnels and everything else. Right? They didn't care about the people, and they're using people as their shields. So to say that is completely untrue. And obviously, we know now the UN is directly connected to Hamas. Right? There's people within the organization that were part of Hamas. But this story is not being told. And then we finally went close to Gaza, where all the food was being set up. So there, we had hundreds and hundreds of trucks trying to get in to Gaza. But UN would not let them in, because UN said, we will not allow Israel to bring these trucks in, right? Only Hamas or United Nations truck drivers can bring it in. And there's been a massive backup. And so you look at the starving people, and I blame UN. And I blame what's happening and the propaganda that's occurring, and not telling the real story of how this is all unfolding. So with that, I just want to give you my thoughts and where things are. And I know there's a lot of geopolitical issues with the different parties. And I was in Hostage Square. And now to see that, obviously, all the protests there and stuff like that, we talked to a lot of people that, we talked to 8 or 9 families that had hostages. We also got to talk to, I can't, the gentleman's name that was killed from America, we talked to as well. Yeah, yeah, it was hard. My wife and I, it was hard to hear that. Right? We want the hostages back just like anybody else. But war is war. And you just can't give in. You can't just capitulate. You're fighting a war against terrorism. And yes, it's awful that they have hostages. But the bottom line is Israel's got to win. And we want them hostages back, but not under Hamas's conditions, under Israel's conditions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Charles and Chris. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Representative Feenstra, maybe we could start off with the issue you ended with, which is the hostages and trying to secure their release. Last weekend, as we all know, 6 hostages were murdered by Hamas just hours before they were found by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. And now there are a lot of protests in the streets of Jerusalem or Tel Aviv and elsewhere to secure the hostages' release. And for those of us in America, we're hearing about the tension between those who want to punish Hamas at all costs and those who want to find a quick ceasefire or some kind of agreement or truce with Hamas in order to release some of the hostages. I'm just curious to know what's the real mood on this? We see the protests, but what did you learn about that tension while you were there? Do you think that the leadership leans one way or another? We know Netanyahu, we know what Netanyahu said about pursuing Hamas, but what about other people in the Israeli government? Where do they fall on that? Where do you think that will ultimately end?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say Defense Minister Gallant, painted the real picture of saying, we're not going to give Hamas what they always want. I mean, this has got to be an agreement that works for Israel. And I think that's what Benjamin Netanyahu thinks. Now, Benny Gantz might think something different, that, hey, we have to give in. I'm not saying one way or the other, but there's this very divide, and we're seeing that right now, obviously, all the protesters and stuff like that they don't think Benjamin Netanyahu did enough. And so now there's a lot of angst and anger, and that's why I go back to and say, we have hostages taken, in Russia, you name it, and it's never fun and it's never good. But I think that the foreign minister and the defense minister, they all understand that this is bigger than 100 and some people. This is bigger. This is Israel as a whole, that we got to do what's best for Israel. And yes, there's, we can all feel our heartstrings dramatically go out to those hostages, but the big picture is destroying this terrorist group. And I think that's where Israel and the defense ministry is standing right now. And they're getting a lot of pushback.
I think that all three of us, Congressman Feenstra, had an opportunity to visit that same kibbutz, small commune where they had prepared or thought they had adequately prepared. One of the things we learned is regardless of where you stood on a playground or walked in that kibbutz, you had 15 seconds from anywhere to get to a bomb shelter. But it wasn't enough. What has to change?
Well, what has to change is obviously the Iron Dome is amazing, but you can't allow the terrorists to be right there, right? That's why they got to be destroyed. That's the only way safety will ever occur on these kibbuzes, right? And by the way, I didn't tell you the people that got killed, yeah, but there was another 12 of those college kids, and I have 3 college kids. They were taken hostage, and I don't know the outcomes of them, but you're never going to be safe until you destroy the people that want to kill you.
You were over there, I think, most recently around the time that the campus protests were going on here in the United States, or maybe it was shortly thereafter. I'm curious to know what impact that had on the Israelis you met with when you went back most recently. Were they questioning U.S. resolve and support? Were they wondering what was going on and why these protests were happening? Just talk to us a little bit about what you heard as a result of that.
Benjamin Netanyahu and the foreign defense minister, they all said that. And it wasn't just America, it was happening in Europe all over the place. And it really goes back to, obviously what happened throughout history. And they don't trust, and I get it. I mean, Israel doesn't trust anybody. And the anti-Semitism that's on the college campuses, that reflects on America. And I think there's a tremendous amount of Israelis that look at America going, are they our friends or not? And especially what has happened, pulling back on some of the ammunition that was going there and stuff like that. I mean, and even written in the Jerusalem paper and stuff like that is, where is the U.S. and where do they stand? Because we're hearing a lot of white noise, and we're hearing from the president sometimes, good, bad, or otherwise. Are they really going to stand with us when we really need it? And I'll just say this: my great satisfaction of that was when Iran came and they started bombing Israel, and we were right there in the fight. That made me feel good. It's like, thank you, we were there in the fight with you. Right now, are we going to be in the fight with Hezbollah? We better be. Right? We have a lot to lose if we're not. But with all the anti-Semitism, you can understand where a lot of Israelis are really checking. Right? Where's our heart? Do we have resolve to fulfill this thing that we're saying?
We'll get to a couple of questions from all of our guests in just a moment. Congressman, one of the sayings that I found very profound recently was, in Israel, we use rockets to protect people. The Palestinians, on the other hand, use people to protect rockets. How do we ever accomplish safety for Israel when they're dealing with an enemy that close with that attitude?
Yeah. And Golan said it best. He said they're using the Palestinians to protect their rockets, to protect all their stuff in their schools, in their hospitals. And he said that's where war is ugly. And we can have this heart and feel the pain of what's happening in Gaza. But he said until we uproot the terrorism, there's going to be a lot of pain and there's going to be a lot of destruction. And we all have to come to grips with that. If you're going to, root out this Hamas terrorist group, there's going to be casualties. And we don't want that. Everybody wants this beautiful playing field. That's not real. That's not real. The best thing we can do, as Israel, as the defense minister said, is tell them ahead of time, we're coming, get out of there. But if they don't listen, they're going to be part of the war. And again, it goes back to, we got to end this, and we got to uproot this terrorist group.
One thing I think is important for people to know, and not enough Americans and the general public are aware of the role that Iran is playing in all this, because they fund Hamas, they fund Palestinian Islamic Jihad, they fund Hezbollah, they fund the Houthis, they fund a lot of other terrorist forces spread throughout the Middle East that don't like Israel and don't like the United States. What are you hearing from your colleagues in the House, the US House, and in the Capitol about what kind of pressure we should be putting on Iran in order to deal with the source of this evil? It's one thing to destroy Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza and trying to rebuild that, but as long as they still have a funding stream coming in there, this is a cancer that's going to continue to grow. So what are your colleagues saying about that?
Well, and it's very, I mean, again, a lot of people just say, we want peace, what can we do to pacify? Again, you have to know your enemy. Iran, they will say, hey, just pacify us with money. We tried that. That doesn't work, right? But we have to understand this. And a lot of, congressional members, senators understand that any day, a nuclear weapon from Iran could land in Israel, right? We have to understand how serious this is, that they're right there. And Iran has said it many times, what they'd love to do more, they don't care about life. All they care about is destroying Israel and destroying Western civilization. Right? That's a clue. That means that we have to do everything possible. And I think a lot of our colleagues understand that, but will they apply? Meaning that are we ready to do what it takes? And I know Israel is. I mean, I think if Israel truly knew that a nuclear bomb was ready to go, I think Israel would say, we're done. We're going to take them out. I mean, we're ready to go. I'm not sure we're the U.S. if we have that resolve, if we're ready to do that. But we have to be. If we want to save the Middle East and Israel and the Western civilization, again, we have to root out the evil that's in Iran. And it's been there obviously for hundreds of generations. But we got to take a stand also.
Okay, the congressman is prepared to take a couple of questions from our guests. So do we have a question out there?
What do you suggest to stop the students from the universities? This disgraceful what's happening right now. Awful. The students fighting against the Jewish, it's a fight. I saw a girl, she looked like 20 years of it, crying. I'm from Israel, here in my college. Having a war here.
So the question,
What do we need to do?
the question for the congressman is, with all of us observing the protests on college campuses, and in the case of many, their misguided support of Hamas, what must we do to make sure that our students feel safe and that they know that we stand with them?
Great question. I sit on Ways and Means. That's a tax entity for the federal government. And it's very simple. So we had Columbia, President of Columbia, we had other professors sitting there, and they won't do anything, all right? I mean, they just say, well, freedom of speech, they can do anything. It's different. People can have freedom of speech. I don't have a problem with that. But when you start stopping them from going to school, persecuting them, all right, that's where it is. And they have tax exempt status, right? They're a tax exempt organization. If they want to go down this path and not stop this anti-Semitism, we've got to revoke their tax exempt status. And we are in the process of working on that and looking at that through the Ways and Means Committee.
Any other questions? Yes, Rabbi.
First of all, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Charles, you actually started asking the question that I was going to ask, which are geopolitical questions. So I listened to news sources in the States and also from some from Israel, and there's many different perspectives that you get in both, which is helpful. But my question comes back to Iran, also Qatar, and also questions on Saudi Arabia. So
let me give you the microphone. So I'm not going to try to repeat that for the benefit of those on Zoom.
Thank you. Appreciate it. There's people on Zoom. I have people on Zoom. First of all, it's a pleasure. I didn't get to that. Thank you for continuing. I'd like to talk to you for a long period of time, but we both have schedules. I have to go teach at Morningside in a minute. So, okay, my first question is going to be about Iran. You already moved us in that direction. Unlike, one of the things that's unique about Hamas amongst the other terrorist groups that are surrounding Israel that are funded by Iran, Hamas is also funded by Qatar. Qatar also funds United States colleges and universities. We know it's been reported over $1 billion. Columbia University being number one. There's probably far more than we don't know. Qatar's also instrumental in all of these negotiations now. How they're able to have Hamas leaders and fund Hamas and also be involved in those negotiations, I don't understand. It's above my pay grade. You probably understand that. I couldn't tell you. But questions I have is, how do, as Charles mentioned before, Israel certainly will do what it needs to defend itself against Iran. The United States has to be involved in that. It comes down to boots on the ground. There's not been boots on the ground. Even when the Houthis have fired on United States vessels, even when Iran has attacked US bases in Iraq. So do we have the resolve to actually make the Middle East safe and, to your point, the world safe? Okay, that's Iran and Qatar. And then Saudi Arabia, from what I'm hearing, especially from Israeli news and investigative journalists, is that Saudi Arabia is still very interested in treaties with Israel and very engaged. We know, very interested in getting Iran and its terrorist proxies out of the region. So where do things stand in regard to Saudi Arabia, both vis-a-vis US-Saudi relations, but even more what you can tell us about Saudi-Israel relations?
Thank you, Rabbi. That'll have to be our last question for you.
And just a quick answer. That is so complex, by the way. I was in Doha a year ago, and I think everybody wants to come to solutions. We all want solutions. We all want to figure this out. But you said something that's very interesting. From Qatar, there's a tremendous amount of cash that's going into these universities. That has been revealed. Again, that's got to stop. I mean, that's why a lot of these universities aren't doing anything. Is the power of the dollar is very strong. But the accords. The first time I was there, we talked about the accords, and Saudi Arabia was very close, and not now. But that's Norway's way. We have to resolve what's happening. By years from that. But I do think that there is this understanding that we can't all be at war, and we've got to figure out how to all live in the same region together. Now, again, terrorism, Iran and Houthis and Hezbollah, they don't care. They care less about trying to live together. They don't want that. So, but everybody else, Jordan, let's not forget about Jordan, Syria, we don't know, right? But I think there is this sort of, hey, what can we do to just coexist together, not all agree together? And I hope that plays out in the next years to come. But I think there's a lot that has to happen, and we got to resolve the issue with Iran first. I mean, you got to cut off the head, and Iran's the head, and you cut that off, and a lot of things go away.
Representative Feenstra said he has time for one more. I heard a groan coming over here after I said that we only have time. Who was the groaner? Because we'll let you ask the question if you have it. I don't see. Okay, who has a question? Okay.
My question is, you addressed it, Representative Feenstra, but Hamas just doesn't care, right? So I don't see this ending well. I don't see that there will be an end, unfortunately, for the hostages. I appreciate Israel looking at the big picture strategically. What do you say? Like, how long is this going to go on? Because obviously they're willing to kill anyone. They just don't care. And I don't see any resolve. They can go to Doha, they can do all this stuff, but I don't really feel like they're never going to agree to anything. So I don't see, unless Israel goes in and takes out their hostages, they can find them. Are they going to be safe?
So the question really is, how much longer is this going to go on? What's the end?
And we can all talk about this. I mean, you think about, I give Israel so much credit because they tried, right? They they got, what was it 42? When was it when they got out of Gaza? Right, and they said, all right, we're gonna, what, 2000, oh yeah, 2005, yeah, right. They got out of Gaza and said, all right, we're gonna have peace. We're gonna give you this, and we're all gonna live for how, you know. And it was funny, it was working. There's so many Palestinians coming into Israel, having jobs, and they just don't realize what they just did. I mean, they stopped. That's all stopped, and it really hurts Israel economically also because of that. But I think now Israel will always occupy Gaza, especially for the long term. And does this end? Well, that's where I think Benjamin Netanyahu and go on to all say the only way it ends is we completely uprooted, right? And that's not that, you know, people want us to just lay down our weapons and say, okay, now we're fine, everything's gonna be good in the world. That's not gonna happen. So I honestly, I give kudos to what's happening in their administration right now with the resolve. I don't, not everybody wants to hear that. They want peace, but peace will come. But peace has to happen after you destroy the terrorists. Ms. Gill.
That was one more question. I don't want to take your time, but if you've got a quick one.
Yeah.
First of all, I thank you for being here. The information war Israel has lost. We can all agree with that.
Absolutely lost.
My question is cut off the head of the snake. We'd all also agree with that. Is there enough oil? It's about oil. Is there enough in Brazil, Guyana? Move the fleet to somewhere like, get out of the Persian Gulf, go to the South Atlantic, cut off the head of the snake.
Yeah, and she said it's all about the oil, and you're right. I mean, and that's why we want to pacify our enemies, and we see that, right? We don't want to do anything with Venezuela, Iran, stuff like that. All right, I'm a Republican. I understand it. We need to be energy independent, but you still have Israel in the region, and that's why they have to do everything possible they can. Just one little fascinating story, and then I'll let you go. But the fight right now is, especially for Benjamin Netanyahu and how you're going to keep all of Israel at peace, especially politically, is you have the ultra-Orthodox Jews. 30 years ago, there was about 1,000 of them. Now there's 30,000 of them. People don't realize the ultra-Orthodox, they don't have to fight the war. And Benjamin Netanyahu always had that group of people supporting him. And now a lot of Israel, they're so angry at the ultra-Orthodox because they don't have to fight the war. And yet the government still pays some of their salaries and stuff like that. So that's this whole geopolitical fight that's happening right now. I just find it fascinating. And, you know, how you got to try to create your agreements with all the factions that were in the political arena of Israel. And I think Benjamin Netanyahu's days are very numbered. I think, but it'll be interesting what happens. I mean, Benny Gaines, the more liberal side, does that come through? I don't know. It'll just be interesting to see. Anyway, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm going to give the final word to Charles, but Congressman, thank you for spending part of your day. I know that your August recess is nearing its conclusion, and we appreciate you
carving out a little time for us. And I think the microphone's telling me it's time to stop. But a couple of quick reminders. The Sioux Chamber of Commerce is happy to play a role in bringing these kinds of important events and conversations to our community. The way that you can support our organization is by saying thank you and continuing your chamber membership, considering an investment in the Siouxland Initiative and our economic development work. And very importantly, in about 2 weeks, we are bringing John Andrazik and Five for Fighting to the Orpheum Theater for our annual event. John Andrazik was profiled in the Wall Street Journal in April. One of the things he said when asked, why are you standing up and talking about Israel and Hamas? You're not Jewish. And he said, you don't have to be Jewish to recognize the evil that is Hamas. You just have to be human. You just have to have a brain. And he said, the real question that I often get is, why am I standing up if I'm not Jewish and I'm not from Israel? And he said, I get this question a lot. But what you should be asking is, why isn't everyone else? That's powerful. If you want to support our organization in bringing this dialogue, please consider joining us at the Orpheum Theater on Thursday, September 19th for John Andrazik and Five for Fighting. We're calling it a keynote with a concert. We're calling it music with a message. And it's going to be a powerful evening, and we hope you will join us. And if you can't join us, would you please consider purchasing tickets so that we can bring some of our military veterans, some of our first responders, and perhaps some of the folks who were directly impacted by floods very, very recently. I also want to say there's some forms on the back. If you want to support Iowans for Israel and continuing this kind of dialogue statewide, support Charles and his organization, pick up one of those pamphlets, pick up a brochure, make a contribution to support them. With them, thank you so much for your support, and back to Charles. This doesn't work.
That's right. I'll just reiterate what he said. If you enjoy this election, please consider supporting Iowans Supporting Israel. As I mentioned, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Contributions are tax deductible, and we do our best to bring support for Israel across the state. This was actually our first event outside of the Des Moines metro area. And we want to replicate this throughout the state. But in order to do that, we need financial support. So please consider making a contribution. And hopefully we will see you in October in Des Moines with our special guest, who may or may not be Consul General Yonam Cohen from the Israeli Consulate. Thank you.